there was a small village called Bethany. On the edge of the village stood a broken house, mud walls, a leaking roof, and inside lived 3 souls: Joseph, his wife, Mary, and their young son, Daniel. Joseph woke up before sunrise every day, no shoes on his feet, a small cloth bag in his hand. Before leaving, he looked at his son and said softly, "Maybe today God will open a door." Daniel smiled. He already knew. Maybe often meant coming home empty-handed. The first pain of hunger. Daniel was only 7 when he understood what hunger truly meant. That night, there was only one dry piece of bread in the house. Joseph broke it in half and placed one piece in Daniel's hand. He drank water and lay down to sleep. Daniel asked quietly, "Papa, aren't you going to eat?" Joseph smiled and lied, "I already ate outside." That night, Daniel couldn't sleep. For the first time, he spoke to God, "Lord Jesus, please don't let my father feel hungry." But heaven stayed silent. A dream called school. Daniel went to school without a bag, without lunch. When teachers asked, "Where is your food?" he replied softly, "I'm fasting today." Other children laughed. That evening, Daniel said, "Papa, one day will become someone important." Tears filled Joseph's eyes. He looked toward the sky and whispered, "Lord, if you have nothing for me, please write something beautiful for my son." But God said nothing. God's silence. Days passed. Poverty grew deeper. Some days there was work. Most days there wasn't. One afternoon, Joseph collapsed in the market, weak, hungry, shaking. People looked and walked away. Daniel ran to him, crying, "Jesus, are you still silent?" She spoke very little, but her eyes were always full of prayer. Every morning, while lighting a small lamp, she whispered, "Lord, please don't let my family sleep hungry today." She hid her own hunger, but never let her husband or son feel it. A morning that became the last. One morning, Mary felt unusually weak. Joseph said, "Stay home today. Rest." She smiled gently. Rest is a luxury for the poor. She went to the village well to fetch water. Daniel called out, "Mama, come back soon." She placed her hand on his head and said, "Study well. I'll be back." She never returned. A silent crowd. By afternoon, people gathered near the well. Someone whispered. She felt dizzy and fell into the water. Joseph's legs trembled. Daniel held his father's hand and asked, "Papa, Mama is okay, right?" No one answered. The final goodbye. When Mary's body was brought out, there was no pain on her face, only exhaustion. Daniel cried, holding her cold hands, "Mama, wake up. I'll stay hungry. Just wake up." The sky stayed quiet. Jesus stayed silent. The night that never ended. That night, a lamp burned in the house, but there was no light. Joseph sat in one corner, broken. Daniel lay on his mother's bed. Again and again, he whispered, "She just went for water. She will come back." For the first time, Joseph spoke to God in pain. "Lord, I never asked for wealth. Why did you take my wife? There was no answer. The end of childhood. The next day, Daniel didn't go to school. He tied his mother's scarf around his books. When the teacher asked, "Where is your mother?" Daniel replied softly, "She lives with God now." That day, Daniel's childhood ended. After Mary's death, Joseph became quiet, too quiet. He worked more, ate less, and slept almost never. At night, Daniel heard him coughing endlessly. One evening, Joseph collapsed at home. His body burned with fever. Medicine cost money, money they didn't have. A son becomes an adult. Daniel sat beside his father all night, holding his hand. Joseph whispered weakly, "No matter what happens, never stop believing in Jesus." Daniel cried silently. Inside his heart, he screamed, "Lord, you took my mother. Please don't take my father too." Only silence answered, a hard decision. The next morning, Daniel folded his school uniform and placed it under the bed. That day, he went to look for work. When someone asked, "Why aren't you in school?" Daniel replied, "My father is sick. Now, I am the man of the house." Faith on the edge. Every night, Daniel sat outside the church and prayed, "Jesus, if you still see us, please keep my father alive." Years passed. No miracle came, but one thing never broke: Daniel's faith. Even when God was silent, he kept believing. The school bell rang that morning. Daniel stood outside the classroom, his uniform folded neatly in his hands. He did not enter. Inside, children were learning multiplication tables. Outside, Daniel was learning how to survive. He walked to the teacher's desk and said softly, "Sir, my father is sick. I won't be coming anymore." The teacher looked at him for a long moment and replied gently, "Education can wait. Responsibility cannot." Daniel nodded and walked away. That was the day. He closed his books and opened the door to hardship. First day of work, Daniel found work at a small roadside shop, sweeping floors, carrying boxes, standing for 12 hours, for one meal a day. At night, his hands trembled with pain, but he smiled when he saw his father eating. Joseph whispered, "I should be the one working." Daniel replied quietly, "You raised me. Now, it's my turn." That night, Daniel prayed, "Jesus, I don't need riches. Just keep my father alive." Silent faith. Days turned into months. Daniel worked. Joseph survived. No miracles. No sudden help. Only faith walking quietly beside suffering. People in the village talked. They always did. Some said, "This boy had dreams once." Others laughed. "Now he sells vegetables." At the shop, customers ordered him around. "Hurry up, poor boy. Careful, don't break it, you can't afford it." Daniel swallowed his pride every day, not because he was weak, but because his father needed him. Bigger. The weight of words. One afternoon a man said loudly, "Poor people are born to remain poor. Don't dream too much." Daniel lowered his head. That night, he cried, alone behind the shop. For the first time, he asked God, "Jesus, did you create me only to suffer?" The wind answered, "God did not." A quiet promise. Joseph noticed the change. One evening, he placed his trembling hand on Daniel's shoulder and said, "People speak from their wounds, not from truth." Then he added softly, "God is writing your story in silence." Daniel didn't understand then, but he remembered those words. Hours passed. Daniel grew from a boy into a man. His hands became rough. His eyes carried stories. Every Sunday, he sat in the last row of the church. While others prayed for success, Daniel prayed only one thing: "Lord, don't forget us." There was no answer. Faith without evidence. Joseph's health never fully returned. Bills came. Worries stayed. Sometimes Daniel felt angry, not at life, but at heaven. One night he whispered, "Jesus, everyone says you answer prayers. Why not mine?" The church was quiet, but Daniel stayed. The test of trust. One evening, after work, Daniel noticed a businessman watching him. The man saw how Daniel spoke politely, worked honestly, and never cheated customers. He asked, "Why do you work like this?" Daniel replied, "Because God is watching, even if he is silent." The man smiled. That was the moment God's silence began to speak.